podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
Welcome to the 1905 podcast. Each week, Joe and I bring you our unfiltered takes on the highs, the lows, and everything in between, following the Blues from Gate 13 of the Matthew Harding stand. Let's hit the notes.
Full-time whistle has gone. It's Napoli 2, Chelsea 3, and Chelsea booked their place into the knockout stages of the Champions League. They have finished 6th in the table, and if I'm honest, I didn't see Chelsea reversing that at half-time. We came out and had a fairly steady first 20 minutes. It wasn't magnificent by any means. It was fairly slow, but quite compact, quite competent. And we managed to get a penalty from a free kick. And Enzo Fernandez dispatched that really, really well. It was another good finish from him from the spot. He hasn't missed this season, which is really, really good. And obviously he's had a few more penalties as Cole Palmer has been on the sidelines for the most part this year. But other than Chelsea getting that penalty in the first half, I can't remember them really having a sniff. There was the ball from Reece James over the top where Pedro Neto got in behind and he made a real mess of it. But other than that, they really were quite poor, Chelsea, and never got going. I thought our passing was slow, our build-up was slow. Every time Rob Sanchez claimed a cross, and I'm talking when we were drawing the game here, not when we were winning, he would wait for all the Napoli players to run back, then we'd slowly roll it out, and then it was just like we weren't going anywhere. There was no real pace, no real kind of impetus to our play, and I couldn't really see a way where Chelsea were going to turn that around. And when Højlund made it 2-1 shortly after getting the equaliser after our opening goal, you felt the worst for Chelsea, and you knew it was going to take a very big performance in the second half to come and turn that around. But again, I've got to say, I've got to be honest, I didn't see what was going on. I wasn't massively keen on the subs. Obviously, Palmer coming on at half time, you felt that was what we needed, of course. But for the other ones, obviously Gittins coming on, you're thinking, oh, I'm not really sure about that. But at least he didn't take off a winger. He took off Gusto. Andres Santos came off. And yeah, it felt a bit more proactive, I must say. Rosenior didn't just go like for like, which I enjoyed. And yeah, after a lot of messing around and a lot of faffing around, and I'll be honest, a lot of stop-start football, João Pedro suddenly found himself in about 25 yards of space, and he dribbled in and he kept going and he kept going, and you're thinking, you need to shut him down, boys. And he hit an absolute worldie into the top corner with his left foot across the goalkeeper. That was an unbelievable strike. And Chris and I have been calling for this because we saw such a confidence player in the Club World Cup, and he even started the season like a house on fire, and his form just completely went out the window. And those shots that you thought, oh, he's going to just clip one here or have a go here, he's been refusing and passing. And maybe that's a sign of the manager changing, and it's given him a little bit of a lift. Maybe Maresca was asking him to do things that were a lot more possession-based, keep the ball, you've got more chance of scoring if you pass it around the defence and knock it in, opposed to having a long shot. Long shots seem to be a thing of the past. Maybe there was a little bit of that was kind of creeping into his play, and Liam Rosenior just said, no, go out there, and if you see a shot that's on, take it. And again, I cannot claim that's what's happened, but he seems to be a lot freer in his play, and that goal was everything. It was an unbelievable strike, and I don't think Chelsea deserved to be going in at that stage at 2-2, but we did get it. And, you away from home in Napoli, you have to take anything you can get. And then obviously a few moments later, they did it again, and a great little play. Palmer held it up, plays a little 1-2, and his through ball, slipping João Pedro through there, and him going on and just audaciously, again, smashing it into the bottom left-hand corner this time was fantastic. And yeah, to go to Napoli and pick up a win like that it can only give the group confidence. I don't think we played well tonight. I think our play on the whole was quite poor. However, I am very aware that it's Europe. It's against the current Italian champions, even though they're having a slight struggle domestically. You still got to go to these places, and if you can win, it's a real bonus. And I think when you win away in Europe, it can make a huge, huge difference to your domestic form. It should give them a lot of confidence going into the weekend's games. And even though I've not been massively, massively supportive of the way we're playing currently, you have to say that's 5 wins in 6 for Liam Rosenior, which, yeah, that's a very, very good start. And his only defeat coming to Arsenal, which, you sort of say that's not really the worst result you can have, losing 3-2. So, yeah, he's had a couple of easy ones in there, but you have to say Napoli had to go for it tonight. They were out at 2-2. There was no point in them just kind of kicking around and hoping and getting a draw against Chelsea. They were out either way, so they had to go for it. They stuck on the players they did, and one of them was Romelu Lukaku, as we know, has been injured. He's got massive hamstring problems. So if he'd have been fit, he'd have started, but clearly he wasn't. And when he came on, he could barely move. And I think we have to call out Napoli's injury list. They have got 7 or 8 first-team players currently unavailable, and you can add Lukaku to that list as well, because he was definitely not fit and he wasn't available really. He was there just as more of a probably a threat to Chelsea to kind of go, look what we've got on the bench. But actually, when he came on, he was no use to anybody. And even though I've given Jamie Gittins a lot of stick this season, obviously he came on with about 25 minutes to go or so, and he was taken off at the end. Okay, it was in the 89th minute, but he looked quite dejected. And even though I'm quite brutally honest with players and brutally honest with my kind of reflections after a game, I never like to see a player come on and taken off unless they're injured. And I felt as though that was maybe a little bit harsh, and I do hope they get around him and just sort of say, look, it's okay, it's purely for the result, and fingers crossed he can see that and he won't be too affected. And I think what is remarkable is this record of Antonio Conte, never gone past a quarter-final stage in the Champions League, which is just phenomenal, really. Of all the leagues he's won all around the world, all around Europe, he's never gone past the quarterfinals. And yeah, he's got it's a really weird thing that he can't seem to get the team that's won the league the year before past that stage. And he's had some really big teams and he hasn't managed to do it with any of them. So yeah, very, very strange. And he looked completely pissed off as he went down the tunnel at the Maradona Stadium. He was really, really, I think, done. And yeah, I wonder with his teams, we saw it at Chelsea when they went so gung-ho and so up and at him when we won the Premier League under him, the last time we won the Premier League, and we failed to follow up the next season with any kind of performances. So you do wonder if he gives all his energy in that 1 year, and it's hard to replicate the following season. But yeah, as for Chelsea's performances, I'm not going to go through all the players. I just want to give a brief mention to some. I didn't think Gusto played very well tonight. I think he was well and truly deserving of the hook. I thought Reece played pretty well, considering he doesn't play in the centre-back position, but I thought it was an odd choice to play him there, because I didn't think Reece really affects the game from the centre of defence. But I think maybe Liam Rosenior was going for a calm head, someone who wouldn't panic and put us in trouble. But I don't think his positioning at times was always perfect, but it was decent enough. I think Fofana's legs have gone a bit, but he stuck it out and he played the full 90, so fair play to him. In midfield, I didn't think we had much control. We weren't overrun by any means, but I just didn't think we popped it around with quite the same precision and accuracy as we normally do. But, it was passable, and when you win a game, no one really cares. In the wide areas, I didn't think Esteval had his best night tonight. He was very well marshalled, and he seemed to be out of it completely, but he didn't really affect the game too often. Pedro Neto, again, rightly hooked at half-time. His form has gone, in the gutter. I don't know. He needs dropping. I've said for a while now he needs taking out the side. I do hope at the weekend we don't see him, because I think if you're Garnacho or even Gittins, who I don't think should start, certainly should be saying, well, look, he's not doing it. When I've not been doing it, I've been taken out of the side. So fair's fair. So I expect to see a change of the wing at the weekend. I think he needs taken out just for his own sanity, because I think if he has a couple of weeks out, he might come back a different player. But at the moment, he's all over the place. Up front with João Pedro, I think he proved tonight why he's so much more effective than Liam Delap. I don't see Liam Delap having that kind of performance tonight. And I'm not going to knock Liam because it hasn't even played. But João Pedro has that in his game. And Chris talked about him scoring essential and vital and crucial goals. Well, you don't get more crucial than the equaliser and then following up with a winner in an away game in the Champions League. So he could be well and truly pleased with his night's work. And last but not least, Rob Sanchez had a more than decent game. I thought in the first half he made a couple of very good sort of, not, I was going to say interceptions, but when balls were crossed in low and hard, he came out and palmed them away very well. I thought his ability to deal with crosses was much better. And even at the death, when he didn't have a lot to do, Garnacho gave it away on the edge of the box with about 2 minutes to go in injury time. And at point blank range, he's made an excellent save. So apart from him kicking the ball straight into McTominay's face in the first 2 or 3 minutes, and it could have gone anywhere, he had a more than decent game tonight, although he does have this brain fart in him. So yeah, I think Chelsea overall can be really, really pleased with their night's work. Of course, it's a great result. I think we said the other day, Chris and I, that I think it's probably results over performances in some cases. I think we still do need to see a much better performance from the team at some stage. And hopefully that can happen at the weekend. But tonight, I think whatever happens, it was all about the result. And I'll be honest, I didn't see us qualifying in the top 8 this time around because I thought the results we'd had were a little bit poor of late, particularly the Karabag game and Atalanta, for example. But we've managed to claw it back. And at the very least, we now have 2 less games to play when the season for us has already been very, very crammed and congested. So yes, a great result in the evening. Performance could have been better, but the result was fantastic and João Pedro stole the show. Napoli 2, Chelsea 3.
We're going to win the bloody Champions League, aren't we? What a win. What a win. It is written in the stars. Right, I'm not going to get too carried away. I'm half joking, but I have to say, woken up this morning, just absolutely buzzing about that. Like Joe says, I'm not saying the performance was perfect by any means, but I think a big European away game at a team at a place like Napoli, they haven't, I think, lost at home for 25 games, was it? And you're going in at 2-1 down at half time, and I'm thinking, this could be one of those nights in Europe where we just fizzle out and end up not doing enough and looking a little bit. We've lost a lot of those sort of games, haven't we, in recent years. Our away record in Europe hasn't always been great. And I was just so pleased with that second half display and what we did. And I think the word that kind of comes to mind is just the personality that we showed, the character. We relied on a couple of bits of magic really from João Pedro, but that's what you got to do to win these sort of big games. And to see Chelsea back in the Champions League on a big night like that, now into the last 16, it's kind of what it's all about. And I had that feeling watching the game after about 20 minutes of the first half. Actually, I thought we actually started all right, personally. I thought that whilst not creating a huge amount, we looked pretty much in control. The goal kind of came as a part of that, of just feeling like we're on the ascendancy. And I was this is great to see Chelsea back in a big, proper European night away in Napoli was really pleasing. And then, like Joe says, the blot really was that sort of last 20 minutes of the first half where the game got away from us a bit. But ultimately, the important thing was we won, and what a performance. And I called it wrong. I thought 16 points would not be enough to get into the knockout stage automatically. And I was very wrong, and I'm very pleased to be very wrong. And what a night it was. I mean, it was really fun kind of after the game, watching back through some of the highlights of the other games, keeping track of it. And that Real Madrid game with Jose Mourinho's last minute goalkeeper scoring the goal to put them into the next round. What a performance. And obviously PSG and Newcastle drawing as well, which is kind of crazy and actually not good for either of them. Yeah, just really, really enjoyed it. I think it's just what it's about, isn't it? So much to talk about. Right, I'm going to focus on a big thing, which I think is Liam Rosenior, because he made a big call before the game. The team sheet comes out. You're looking through it going, like, okay, what has he done here? This seems strange. And he'd obviously thought he's going to match up Antonio Conte's back three, doing something that we'd kind of been talking about he might do, which was this idea of just play one of the centre backs and play Reece James and Cucurella as kind of left and right side centre backs. And it didn't really work, did it, on the night? We looked exposed in those kind of, particularly on the Cucurella Neto side. I don't think Neto's a left wing back, is he? And again, he didn't have a great night. It didn't really work. And Wes Fofana, who Joe, I think, called out a week or so ago and said, has his legs gone? And, you know, it wasn't all bad on the night, but both goals, you're looking at him thinking, oh, he lost Højlund for the second goal. On the first goal, he gets turned just a bit too easily, and you're looking at him thinking, he's by no means a bad player, but I'm not sure he's the player anymore, and I don't think he's the player you want in the middle of that back three. But unlike many managers that we've had in recent years, he wasn't stubborn. He didn't stubbornly go, it's my way or the highway, this is what we're going to do. He changed it. Palmer on at half time. And then the big change for me was the one I sort of cried out for at half time, which was to go back to a back four, brings Chalobah on, Reece James back at right back, and we just immediately look better. And I just really like seeing that. I really like seeing the proactiveness. I think that's what you want as a fan. And you want a manager who's willing to kind of make quick changes, make tough changes. Palmer, it was a funny game for him, wasn't it? Because you look at it and go, he didn't do a huge amount, but he's come out with two assists. And I watched them back, and I call them Lee Morgan assists. There's a guy that I've played football with, Joe knows well, a big Chelsea fan, and Lee Morgan is one of, if not the best footballer I've ever played with, playing Sunday League football. And he probably could have made it professionally, I think, at some sort of level. He's such a great player. Was on the books of Chelsea as a youngster. The reason I call it a Lee Morgan assist is often I would get an assist for Lee Morgan by basically passing the ball about 7 yards to him and then him doing something outrageous like João Pedro did for that first goal. Palmer got a couple of Lee Morgan assists, but to be fair, when I watched them back, it was the speed that he played it to Pedro was really, really good. And obviously João Pedro then has a lot to do for both goals, but it's giving him that ball quickly. And you kind of look at that, and it was a bit of a throwback, wasn't it, to how well those two had linked up in the summer. And maybe a bit of a reminder for all of us that João Pedro just hasn't had Palmer at all this season, really, to do that for him. And I called out João Pedro after the Palace game, giving a bit of praise, which now I'm very happy about because he's massively validated it last night. But his numbers he's on a great run of form, let's face it. But having Palmer back with him, I just wonder what those two could cook up together. And again, I think back to the summer and the quotes from Cole Palmer talking about João Pedro and saying he really likes him and he really rates him. He was like, he's an absolute top player. And we've said before, you need to surround Palmer with top players. That's what he's going to want. And I kind of look at João Pedro and Esteval and think, yeah, I think Palmer will be pretty happy with those two going forward. So yeah, really, really, really good to see. And I mean, what a goal it was. One of the great Chelsea European goals, that first João Pedro goal. But yeah, back to Rosenior, I just really liked the bravery, the proactiveness, and then he brings on Gittins, and I'm like, oh God, he brought Gittins on. But, and Gittins he's fine, isn't he? But he's everything we've said. I'm just not sure he's at the level. But then he's brave enough to bring Gittins off and bring on Bellissimo when old big Lukaku comes on. And I just thought, brilliant, because so many managers wouldn't have done that because they would have felt that it was going to cause problems and maybe he brings off someone different just to make life a bit easier on himself. But he doesn't. He brings off Gittins, who's only been on the pitch for about half an hour, if that. And I just thought he clearly has the confidence in himself and the way he manages his players to know that that's not going to cause a huge issue. And it was quite notable, actually, in the interview after the game that he called out Gittins as doing really well and said, he had to bring him off. I just thought it was quite clever. Like, he knows that the soundbite will get back to Gittins. He's given him a shout out, given him some praise, and said, look, I had to bring on, I think he called him Big Baddie, to keep an eye on Lukaku. I just thought it was good. I just thought there's something there, and a nice clip came out of him with João Pedro after the game. João Pedro doing an interview, and he just showing a bit of character. I like Liam Rosenior. I thought I would before he joined. I just thought the way he'd come across, I'd quite enjoy him. And at the moment, I mean, Joe said it, 5 and 6. It's a pretty flawless start. And the thing for me, and we said it when he joined, we said Rosenior has to start well. He has to start well. And most of the games he's had so far he kind of had to win them, really. And there's a couple of gimmies in there. But to have a big night like last night, away at Napoli, against Antonio Conte, a little bit of a tactical win in that he's made changes, I think that's big for him. And I think it'll really help him to win over the respect of Chelsea fans and win over certainly his players, which he already seems like he has done. But particularly for Chelsea fans, I just think there'll be a little bit of momentum going behind him. And yeah, that could be so important. Got a shout out for what a lovely moment it was when João Pedro scores and celebrates in front of Romelu Lukaku. That was very, very funny. As Lukaku's warming up on the sideline, it's a great clip, that one. And what a save, by the way, by Rob Sanchez at the end from Lukaku. That was huge. Really good reactions. And again, Sanchez is one of those players where I look at now and I'm like, I never thought I would say it a year ago, but I trust him and I like him. And yeah, he's could he have done better on the first goal? Maybe, but generally you're looking at most of his performances now, bar the one he throws in a couple against Arsenal, and he does, some brain dead things at times, like run the ball out the box, like Joe said. But generally, I think he's someone I trust in that Chelsea goal. What else to say? It's great. It's great news for Chelsea to be in the knockout. To me, it's just about being back in the big time, and it feels poignant, doesn't it? Like Joe said, like rightly so, asked the question after the last game in terms of where are we going? What are people like Palmer going to be thinking about the project and those sort of things? And this is what it's about, isn't it? We are in the last 16 of the Champions League now. We'll find out on Friday kind of our likely route to the final. But the fact we are even in that conversation now is huge. In a funny way, I don't really care who we get. I think we could even get PSG or Newcastle. But do you know what? You're in the Champions League to play these big games on these big nights. The second leg will be at Stamford Bridge, which is, as we know, always huge. And who knows what we could go on and do at this point. The season is so poised to go one way or the other. But I just have a sense there's not a huge number of teams in Europe who would want to be drawn against Chelsea, because we do have a growing and nice tendency to turn up on these big nights against big teams and put in a performance. And to go and do it away from home in Napoli, show the personality that we did, is very encouraging.
On the whole, I think Chelsea will be very pleased with their night's work. They'll be pleased with the campaign and the way it has finished. There have been some worrying moments in there when they were drawing at Karabag and losing to Atalanta, but I think there were some decent performances in there too. Of course, the victory against Barcelona, which we've mentioned one or two times, I know, but it was a very good game and we did play extremely well. One of Maresca's real high points at the club, in my opinion. But yeah, they will be walking away from Napoli last night and thinking to themselves, that's a job well done. We've made the top 8, which is a very difficult thing to do. And as we've just sort of mentioned a little bit about the Benfica and Real Madrid game, I mean, they were third going into the tournament, and then that late goal by the Benfica goalkeeper has just flipped it all around. Benfica have qualified for the knockout stages, and Real Madrid have been eliminated to 9th position, and they've missed out. So they go into the qualifying round as well. So I think most Chelsea fans, with a sort of a level head, would have assumed that we would have missed out on the top 8 last night, potentially even if we'd won. So the fact that we won and finished 6th and basically looks quite comfortable in the end, which it definitely wasn't, but it's a nice way to finish. And I think, if nothing else, that will just give the players a huge lift, and they can almost just not think about the Champions League for a good few weeks now before we end up back in the knockout stages. They can just concentrate on the league and the League Cup game, obviously against Arsenal in the second leg next week. We've touched on João Pedro, the pair of us, but I think just to sort of say about him last night, it's good to finally see a player at the club who's willing to kind of take the ball by the horns. And I think that João Pedro did that last night. He could have maybe held that ball up and passed it. He could have cut inside and thought, do you know what, that's not on. I'm going to try and look for an easy pass or a safe pass. But do you know what? He took responsibility. And I think I've been waiting for somebody, whoever it might be, to suddenly go, a bit like Palmer last year and the year before, where he just kind of went, if he saw an opportunity, he didn't think twice about it. He just went, no, I can see the top corner's open, I'm going to have a go. And more often than not, he put it there. And I think it was really, really nice to see João Pedro just take that mantle and say, we need a goal. And this might not go in, but do you know what? I've got a lot of option, barring passing and coming backwards again. Sod it, I'm going to have a whack. And what a beautiful strike that was. And the second goal, in many ways, is even better, just purely because it's the winning goal. And it's a real, I think the first goal, you can sort of say, 1 in 50 of those fly in. But the second goal felt like a real striker's goal, attacking the defence, shifting the ball half a yard and burying it into the bottom corner. That is no easy finish, by the way. That's a real proper striker's goal and a really classy finish. And if he's on form and if he's feeling it and he feels confident, I mean, that's going to cause West Ham all sorts of problems at the weekend. And I think I would hate to see now him not play against West Ham. I think he's the man in form. I think we've given Delap enough chances. He will get his moments again. There's no question he will probably come on against West Ham, but I would really like to see Liam Rosenior not tinker with the side. And I hope they don't go down this plays in the red zone type thing and go, well, let's give him a chance to have to sit this one out and we'll play somebody else and bring him on. I really hope we don't do that. And we see more of João Pedro, because in this form, I think he's a confidence player. And while he's banging form, let's keep playing him. I think we've sort of done the Napoli game to death a little bit now. I think we've all moved on from that. A fantastic result, a fantastic win. There's no getting away that Chris mentioned Liam Rosenior's personality and what he says after games, before games and during the week. He is very engaging. He does make you think positively about Chelsea. He tries to give answers to questions in a jovial way as well as a serious way. He's kind of got a good personality. And I think the fact that he's English and he's from London, he understands what Chelsea's about. I'm liking the fact that he doesn't shy away from anything. If he doesn't know the answer or if he thinks the media are sending him down a rabbit hole, a bit like they did with the Cole Palmer questions last week, he was quite upfront and honest about it. He didn't fluff anybody. He just said, no, he's very happy. I don't know where these questions are coming from. Just because he's a Man United fan doesn't mean he wants to move to Man United. And I don't think any of us think that. It's just a case of he handled it very well, but he did it with a smile on his face. He wasn't aggressive or moody. Because you can imagine the same question going to Maresca. He'd have been very aggressive and very miserable about it. And I don't think he'd have given the same response. In fact, I think he'd have given a very negative response or not even answered the question. And I think sometimes if you just hit that question head on and face it up, I think it's a much easier way for the media to say, oh, do you know what? When he does say something, he probably means it and it's true, opposed to kind of going, well, he didn't really mean that, or he dodged the question. I don't think Liam Rosenior so far anyway has not dodged any questions. And I hope for his sake, things do continue to go smoothly for him. He's a good guy. He looks a really good, engaging manager. He seems very friendly. He's got a good, really good work ethic. You can see that. The training videos and people that I speak to say he is a really, really good guy. And I'm loving the fact that he's been able to come into a group of matches which on paper, most of them looked winnable, barring the Arsenal game. You could have questioned the Napoli game away as being a difficult one, but the league fixtures and obviously the Paphos game, Charlton game, etc., all looked winnable on paper. We've got West Ham at the weekend, Wolves coming up. This was a good set of fixtures for a new manager to come into it and get results quickly. It doesn't mean it's always going to work out for you, but I think the fact that he has taken those games, and the football's not always been brilliant, not in every game, but we've won them. And obviously not forgetting Crystal Palace and Brentford in there as well, which could have been tricky on paper, but we have safely just about navigated those two matches as well. Has given the club a very positive feel in the last, has it been 6 weeks, which I think before that, I think everybody was throwing the worst under Enzo Maresca. As we look forward to the West Ham game at the weekend, I think we will know what they're going to do. Nuno's teams tend to rely on indirect free kicks whipped into the box, long throws, corners coming in, send everybody forward that's got aerial ability, and hope for a knockdown and somebody to turn it in. But we are facing West Ham, who have suddenly turned a corner. They had a very, very poor run of form, but they beat QPR in the Cup. They've beaten Spurs at Spurs, and they just beat Sunderland 3-1, who have been a fairly tough nut to crack for a lot of teams this season. So, yeah, no easy task there, but they managed to dispatch them 3-1. And it's been Somerville who's been the main incumbent, who's basically got all their goals. He's scored in the last 3 matches, and I've always quite liked Somerville. He's a very, very fast player. He's been playing sort of wider left than recently, with Bowen on the right-hand side, and Bowen has added to the tally as well, but again, only from the penalty spot. But it seems to be that Somerville is the guy that's probably their most dangerous player at the moment. So whoever's playing at fullback, right fullback, you'd like to think that that'd be something they look at with Reece James or Malagusto coming in there. They both played last night, so it's hard to say who will get the nod at the weekend, but fingers crossed it is Reece and he can play it right back, because I think he can affect the game for Chelsea in much greater detail and depth there for us. And quite frankly, I've stopped guessing who we're going to play at centre-back, because I've never known a team in the history of football that's changed their centre-backs more than Chelsea. Every single match it's a different two. So the likelihood is that it's going to be Trev Chalobah coming in, because he didn't start the game last night, alongside maybe Bellissimo, maybe Josh Achampong, maybe Fofana. Who the hell knows? Nobody has got a clue. Wouldn't surprise me if we saw Hato at left back. I don't think we will. I think Cucurella will probably just about keep his place, just because West Ham being a London derby, they might think that Cucurella is possibly the best place to go. Maybe Hato gets a start against Wolves next week, but I think on this occasion it will probably be Cucurella. And in the midfield, I think we should see something very, very similar. I think Enzo and Caicedo at some point are going to need a rest. I don't think we can keep playing them into the ground every single week. But I think, whilst it's not broke, let's not fix it. So I think you will see Andre Santos, Caicedo and Enzo Fernandez playing slightly higher. I don't think Palmer will start. I just have got a feeling last night he didn't look himself. I know he sort of ended up with 2 assists, but like Chris said, they weren't what you class as proper assists. But I just think that he might be on the bench at the weekend again, and he might come on and try to affect the game if we need him. In the wide areas, I think Neto, I've said this for a few weeks now, needs to be dropped. I think he needs to go away and have a few games off, sit on the bench for a little bit, see what's going on. And certainly I want to see Garnacho and Estevao start again alongside João Pedro up front. Obviously, Rob Sanchez in goal. That would be my team. And I think if Chelsea turn up and play well and in the sort of form and confidence that they're in, I say predict a Chelsea win. I never predict a Chelsea win anymore, because you just never know. But I think that's a side that can certainly go out and beat a lot of teams in the Premier League. But I think we have to start well. I think we've started a lot of games in the Premier League quite slowly. And even though West Ham have had a good run of form of late, I don't think they're particularly good. I just think they've managed to galvanise themselves and sort of slowly start to gain positions back on the teams above them and make a bit of a fight of it, which is commendable. But yeah, I expect Chelsea to go to Stamford Bridge at the weekend, and my prediction is that we actually put on a good performance at the weekend. I have a real sense that we're going to play a little bit freer. I feel as though maybe the Champions League has been weighing on us slightly, and now that's over and done and dusted, the players can now concentrate on the league form. And I just have a sneaky suspicion that we might score a few goals and finally put in a really, really good top quality performance. And I really hope that we can. Over to you, Chris.
Well, I've just seen Chelsea's potential opposition in the last 16. I think the draw's on Friday, isn't it? But we will play either Newcastle, Qarabağ, Monaco, or PSG. So yeah, tasty games, whoever it is. Yeah, you want Qarabağ or Monaco, don't you, really? But whoever we've got, we'll take them on. And I love a second leg at Stamford Bridge. As I said before, some of the greatest nights of my Chelsea supporting life have been those big Champions League second leg games. So yeah, whoever we've got, that'll be fun. I thought an interesting conversation would be, what is Chelsea's best 11 for that big night in the Champions League final when we get there? I'm being facetious, but I do think it's an interesting topic and something we've been chatting about a lot in the last week or so. So I'm going to give you the team that I think the general consensus we had is around our absolute best 11, and would love to hear from you guys and girls of what you think and what your team would be. And again, you can contact us at hello@1905podcast.com or on Instagram, 1905podcast. So here's our team, and I think the general consensus is probably it's a back four at the moment. We obviously saw Rosenior try the back three yesterday. It was all right, but it wasn't perfect. And I think the general thing is probably a back four. But obviously there is flexibility in the lineup, and we'll talk about that as we go through. So Super Rob Sanchez in goal. I never thought I'd say that, but Rob Sanchez is number one. You kind of look ahead to the summer, don't you, at the moment, and look at Penders and think, wouldn't it be now the perfect scenario to bring Penders in, but keep Rob Sanchez at the club as well? And probably say to Penders for his first year in England, be the number two to Sanchez, be the cup keeper, get yourself, 10, 15 appearances under your belt, and then see where you are in a year's time, ready to kind of step in as number one. It would take a lot of pressure off, wouldn't it, that sort of adaptation period? And I know that with young goalkeepers, you want them to play a lot, but I just think that would be, to me, quite a good, sensible option. And didn't think I'd be saying this a year ago. And if we got linked to Mike Mannion again now, I'm not sure I'd want him, which is mad. But so Rob Sanchez in goal, back four, right back, Reece James. Like Joe said earlier, even playing at West Ham, I think in a big game, you want Reece James in at right back. And I didn't really talk about it, but wasn't it refreshing against Crystal Palace, particularly to see Reece James overlapping and doing his old danger on that right wing where he can really whip in great crosses, and he did for the goal. That was the incident that led to the penalty. But Reece James at right back doing his right back stuff. Cucurella left back, of course, and then centre backs. Let's say that Colwell's not fit, because he won't be. So right now, right now I think it's Chalobah is the easy one. He's in the team, and then it's who do you put alongside him? And it probably was Fofana that I'd go with. But Josh Achimpong isn't a million miles behind him in my mind of where his legs are at right now. But I think if you're playing the Champions League final tomorrow, I've got that as my back four with Fofana and Chalobah. And you looking ahead to the summer and next season, you kind of look at it and go, if you can bring Colwell in and bring in one really good centre-back in the summer, and obviously we've got linked to that Xhaka, sounds like we are still front-runners to get him in the summer. But if you had a four of, for example, Colwell, Achimpong, Chalobah, and a new signing, I don't think it's a bad group, but it can maybe need a bit of experience. Anyway, let's move to the midfield. I've got my two holding players, so I'm going to play a 4-2-3-1. And I think these two are a duo that I just want to see regularly playing for Chelsea now together, and it's Andre Santos alongside Moises Caicedo. I think the way that you see Rosenior set up is that those two play very close together. Andre Santos obviously knows him so well. He does this little job where he'll sort of drop in and make it a back three at times, which he's brilliant at. And I think together it gives us that, we become quite physical and difficult to play through in the middle, I think. So I've got those two in the middle there. And then this is where it gets interesting. So this is my absolute, I want to get my best players on the pitch and the players that I think would just be really exciting all working together. So I've got Enzo Fernandez in at number 10, delivering as he is consistently now goals and assists. I've got Esteval and Cole Palmer alongside him. So you could actually probably have them rotating a fair bit. One's off the left of him, one's off the right. They're kind of playing as sort of wingers stroke inside number 10s. And the key thing with both of them is if you've got a fullback like Reece James and Cucurella bombing on outside you, then they can naturally give you a little bit of width. So you haven't always got to do that job yourself. And I think that we've often seen Cole Palmer, I've said this so many times, do his most dangerous stuff on that kind of inside right channel. And I think playing him off the right might just be a way to unlock and get the best out of him again. So there's your three behind. And at the moment, the striker's easy, isn't it? João Pedro, we've talked about him a lot today. So let us know what you think of that. I think it would be really exciting to see. I've said it so many times this season. We haven't seen Palmer and Esteval on the pitch together enough for long enough. I wonder when we'll finally get to see that unlock. And at the moment, the three in midfield behind them are just for me, a banker to start in most big games right now. I think Andre Santos has really put himself in that position. And then if you ever get a Romeo Lavia fit again, then what a good option he is to bring into that sort of midfield too as well. So yeah, you look at that as an 11 and think, it's not bad, is it? It's not bad. If the weak area probably is still at centre-back, where it just makes you a bit nervous and think we're not really consistent enough there. And the question mark really is, are any of them now top level? I think we felt like Colwill was getting there at the end of last season. I think Fofana was before his injuries, but I'm not sure now. And I know there's a lot of people who love Trev Chalobah. I really like him. I'm just not sure he's top level. Like, he's a great player and I'd want him in the group. But for me, he's my number 3 or number 4 centre-back in a group of centre-backs, if that makes sense. But not when you look at 11, it's not bad, is it? It's not a bad batch. It'd be interesting to see if we ever get to see that lineup. But yeah, let us know what your view on that by email or Instagram. And yeah, I'll finish there. Let's hope that we can keep the momentum going against West Ham. It really would be a great way to go into that Arsenal game with yet another win, and would obviously keep that league table looking pretty neat and tidy for us. But this is Chelsea, and so who knows what will happen on Saturday night. But we'll be back on Sunday to reflect. And yeah, every little thing's going to be all right. See you next time. Those were the Chelsea notes for this week. If you enjoyed the podcast, do us a favour and share it with a fellow Blue. And we'd love to hear your thoughts, so leave us a review wherever you're listening. Wherever you may be, stay carefree, and remember, every little thing's gonna be alright.